Hi again. So if you're watching this, hopefully you've already watched part 1. Will make more sense. In part 1 we went over how to write an introduction and how to write body paragraphs. But for body paragraphs, we didn't go over how to add quotes to the body. So what we're going to do in this video is add how to add quotes to the body, conclusion, and hopefully live formatting. Evidently I take too long, so we'll see. So how do we add quotes to our body? We want to make sure that we always integrate our quotes. We don't just throw them in and hope that people understand what they say or mean. We have to tell them. Remember, it said earlier, always treat your audience as if they know nothing, because what you see in a quote, they might not see in a quote. And if we have to, as teachers especially, reach really hard, then we don't know for sure if that's what you thought too, or if we're just trying to connect the dots, even though they're not even there. So you want to make sure that the quotes flow with your text. For every line of quote, you should have 3 lines of analysis. So remember, if you have 3 lines of quote, which is a really long quote, that means 9 lines of analysis. So make your quotes as short as possible. But be really careful not to alter the meaning if you do this. If I say, oh, I quote somebody as saying Doritos, right? And I said, really, I hate Doritos. And somebody said, in the following quote, Gabby mentioned her love of Doritos. That's not how that works, right? I'm saying something that didn't happen. I'm just using the one word that was accurate and taking it completely out of context and making it what I want it to be. So here's an example. The protagonist, Mary, let her husband know that she would not be joining him for dinner. And then there's my citation. Cisneros 3, that's the author's last name and the page number. The fact that Mary would not be joining him for dinner shows the distance the couple was starting to experience. This is symbolic for the lack of hope that Mary has in her relationship and her apprehension moving forward, thus foreshadowing the ultimate demise of the relationship. So I took that quote, right? I made it flow with my original text. Mary let her husband know that she would not be joining him for dinner. The way that I did that is I made it just kind of be the second part of the sentence instead of saying, Mary says, and then this. If that's your skill level, go for it. But if you want to level up, this is how to write it. And then you notice I have 3 sentences of analysis afterwards. The fact that she would not be joining him for dinner says that there's distance, right? You know when you question everything that your friend says to you, and you're like, why'd they say it like that? That's what you have to do here. You kind of have to really overanalyze the characters and their actions and things like that in order to write like this. So you see that she's not joining him for dinner, and that makes you think, they must not be that close. You see that they're not joining them for dinner, and you see that she might be apprehensive about the relationship. She might not like this relationship as much as they think. If she doesn't like the relationship's over, right? There's a demise. There's a destruction of the relationship. So there's your analysis. How to eliminate words in your quotation. You can start your quote from anywhere. You do not need ellipses, those 3 dots, even if it is mid-sentence. The reason why is because if you start the quote with a capital letter, that lets me know that that is probably the start of the sentence. If you start it with a lowercase letter, that's probably the middle of the sentence, right? Just like in this other one, that is a lowercase t. That shows me that I started that quote in the middle of a sentence. And I didn't put ellipses there because you don't need them. The only time you need, I'll get there. You can end your quote anywhere and you do not need ellipses, even if it's mid-sentence. Just like here, I did not put a period in my quote. That shows me there was no period in the original text at that point, and therefore it was not the end of the sentence. I do not need to put the ellipses. It's just extra. Don't need to do it. It makes your paper weightier and gaudier and not as great. Do not put ellipses there if it's just ending in the middle of the sentence. The only time you need ellipses is if you're taking words out of the middle of the sentence. So if I say Gabby ... Doritos, not Gabby says she likes Doritos, right? Only if I'm taking it out of two pieces of the sentence is when I need ellipses. And remember, don't change the meaning of the quote by doing this. So here's an example. A quotation is the repetition of one expression as part of another one, particularly when the quoted expression is well known or explicitly attributed by citation to its original source and is indicated by quotation marks. There's a very long quote. I want to shorten that. Here we go. The quoted expression is well known by citation to its original source. Notice, I started that mid quote, right? I took, if you can see my pointer, I took from here, I skipped all of this, and then I continued on right here. And then I ended it, right? So I started mid-sentence, I ended mid-sentence, and I took stuff out of the middle. There's no quotations at the there's no ellipses at the beginning, there's no ellipses at the end, just in the middle where I took things out. And then I finished with my beautiful in-text citation. So it says Wikipedia, parentheses, period. Remember, your periods always go outside of the parentheses, outside of the quotation marks, unless it is part of the quotation. If you don't want to quote, there's another option, paraphrasing. Paraphrasing, remember, it takes the original text and puts it in your own words. It doesn't mean it's shorter, it just means it's in your own words, which for me, that usually means it's longer because I can't say things as concisely and as perfectly as the person who originally wrote it. Here are a couple YouTube videos on why you would paraphrase and how to paraphrase, but overall that's what it is putting it in your own words. It's a great move to prove your ethos, prove your credibility, prove that you understand what you're talking about. So paraphrasing is a very good thing to do, but remember, same rules apply as a quote. If you have a line of paraphrase, you should have 3 lines of analysis. Here's an example of a body paragraph that we made for that Spider-Man essay that I mentioned earlier. By seeing the correlations, by seeing the correlations, readers could tell that, that Garfield has read the comics. That helps his background knowledge and makes him an even better Spider-Man. His enactment of Spider-Man makes the audience feel awkward. This creates the comic accurate Spider-Man and true to comic progression in relation to the formation of his abilities, surpasses all the other renditions of Spider-Man, therefore showing Garfield is the best Spider-Man of all time. However, without Garfield's flexibility, his Spider-Man would not reign supreme. So I just noticed that this was 2 slides. It was supposed to be 2 slides. And I have on the other one, I'll add it in here later, but I have the topic sentence and the quote on the other one, and then this one just has the analysis and the conclusion. So look at how long my analysis is, though. Our analysis that we wrote together, this actually wasn't me writing, this was my students telling me what to write. The analysis is super, super chunky. It takes up almost my whole whiteboard because it should. How to write a conclusion paragraph. So a conclusion wraps up the paper. It restates the goals, it gives the why of why it was written, and here are the parts. So first things first, restate the thesis. Notice in here, we put, therefore showing Garfield as the best Spider-Man of all time. We related it back to the thesis, right? You definitely have to restate the thesis in your conclusion paragraph, just to let me know for sure that this was a purposeful thing. Summarize the points and the relevance, why is this important, and then have a call to action. and we're going to go over all those parts. So first things first, restate the thesis. If you are struggling or a beginner writer, super easy, just copy and paste your thesis statement and write it right there at the very beginning of your conclusion. If I cannot find your thesis statement at the end of paragraph 1, I'm going to look at the beginning of the conclusion to see if maybe those things correspond. Maybe they're the same. Because if they are, then I know that that's at least what you're trying to have be your thesis. If you're a really great writer, restate your thesis. Don't put a copy and paste. You can do it. This helps to reiterate your point and strengthen your argument throughout the whole paper, and you can alter this so it doesn't sound so repetitive, but it's unnecessary at this point. If you're struggling, I just want you to try. I don't want you to have to rethink and think about how to restate what you already said. Again, if you're an amazing writer and you feel confident in your abilities, do it. If you know that you struggle with writing, don't do it. Copy paste. Next is summarize. So you're going to summarize your main points in key evidence that you saw, make relations to your thesis. You should never add new information in your conclusion that's not your call to action or something like that. If you are in your summarizing part and you are saying, oh, also this about Spider-Man, don't do it. Just don't. Nope. Don't give them new things to think about. Just drill in what you already said. You're going to write the why. Why is this important? Why did you write it? Why should anybody care about it? If you don't know these things, try to talk them out with somebody. I know a lot of the times in English class, you're writing stuff you don't care about. Figure it out. It's something you're going to have to find skills for if you want to continue education. It's difficult, I know. I've been there. But you got to do it. Last is the call to action. What can the reader do to resolve this? How should things change in the world because of this? What should be the result of the lesson learned? So my student who was writing their essay on climate change, take a bike to work, make sure you recycle. She gives us next steps for her readers, right? The student who is writing about cars, make sure to buy an automatic car, make sure to do this, research the torque beforehand, things like that. Here's our conclusion. So first, we restate the thesis. Spider-Man was best played by Andrew Garfield due to his demeanor being comic accurate, flexible, and not revenge focused. Our summary. Overall, Garfield stayed true to the comics by instances similar to his interaction with Gwen Stacy. You might also add in some more because this is just one main point. Why is it, why? An accurate and realistic Spider-Man is important because he is the role model for so many people. And then our call to action. Everyone should take the time to learn the lessons from this adaptation and watching these movies. That's the conclusion. Next, we're going to go over how to MLA format your paper. I'm going to make that a separate video too, just to give it the most time possible.